Bibliophiles of the internet, my name's Adriana, and today I'm here to bring you my August wrap-up. The first book I read in August was The Kiss Quotient by Helen Huang. Its Own Voices romance about Stella, who's on the autism spectrum, and she hires a male escort to teach her the finer nuances of dating and sex. But the two of them actually click, which could spell out disaster for their professional arrangement. I actually made a 5 reasons to read video all about this book's amazing representation, how the story celebrates and portrays positive experiences with sex, and just its overall importance. I highly recommend it, and I gave it 4.5 stars. Then on a whim, I reread Major Crush by Jennifer Eccles. This story is a YA romance centered on a high school marching band, which makes me feel nostalgic as fuck. Plus, I read and reread this a million times as a teen, so this was a very loaded, very biased rereading experience. It's about Virginia, who just made drum major and is her school's first ever female drum major, and she's also her school's first ever co-drum major because she has to share her spot with the charming yet insufferable Drew. This has really divided the band because everyone expected Drew to be drum major and now they have to listen to Virginia, but she hasn't really earned their respect, so the marching season is off to a very rough start. So obviously, to set a good example and bring the band together, Virginia and Drew have to work on improving their dynamic, which could have some steamy results. Honestly, there are some things this story perpetuates that are not great. Full stop. But for me, it's extremely nostalgic, and it's the only book I've ever read that authentically explores the marching band experience. You get to see those grueling after-school practices, the thrill of traveling on a bus overnight with all your friends to a field show, the interband politics between different sections, all the drama that comes up when you're thrown together with all these other musicians for hours and hours every week. And romance definitely happens in those closed quarters, which is why I think that enemies to lovers dynamic between warring drum majors is so thrilling to read about. The banter, the inside jokes, the shifting loyalties, and overcoming all those dynamics to put on a show together is shown in a way that's realistic, and there's a steamy romance, which is definitely a plus. After that, I read The Trouble by Daria Defour. This is an Own Voices queer romance about a character who's aromantic. So technically it's not a romance, but the idea of an aromantic romance is the best way I can pitch this book because it follows the structure and beats of a traditional romance without being a romantic experience for the protagonist. The main character, Danny Kim, is the frontman of a Seattle indie rock band, and all the members are struggling to balance music and college, and things are only getting more difficult as they get tapped by a pretty major record label after one of their sets. At the same time, after one of their shows, Danny very badly and rudely hits on a cute guy at the bar named Ji-yoon, who he later finds out is the TA for his extremely difficult accounting class. So now Danny is juggling writing music, doing gigs, passing his classes, and trying to get back on Ji-yoon's good side. I love this. I had no idea how much I needed a story like this, and it has profoundly affected my life. I've never seen an aromantic character who's able to maintain a satisfying and healthy relationship where the other person understands and respects their experiences. It's really fascinating to see how Danny and Ji-yoon navigate this gap in their identities, so to speak. And it's refreshing to see Ji-yoon take the initiative and say, let's figure out our priorities, our values, those things we both need in any kind of a partner to be satisfied, and figure out how to make that work for us. This story is hilarious, heartfelt, there's great sex scenes, and a wonderful relationship dynamic. I mean, what else could I want? I gave it 4.5 stars. After that, I listened to I'm Still Here by Austen Channing Brown, read by the author herself. This is nonfiction in which Austen Channing Brown explores how even now whiteness prevails in political, religious, personal, and professional spheres. She talks about her experience working in a religious nonprofit organization and unpacks how clauses on diverse inclusion still fail to hit the mark and address the real issues in the modern workplace. In my one-sentence Goodreads review, I said that this book was the epitome of transformative literature, and it truly is. Through her own personal experiences, Austen Channing Brown skillfully explores how gatekeeping and systems of privilege are still very much alive. There were some moments where she put to words experiences I've had in the workplace, like when you suggest an idea that gets passed over and then a white dude proposes the same exact idea to a chorus of praise. But what was most profound to me was how she talks about how even now when we're talking about systemic racism and systematic oppression, we are still privileging whiteness. We are still in a place where we default to explaining that racist things exist while treading around the feelings of white people through the lens of educating white people instead of centering brown power and brownness itself. Like, we shouldn't still be having conversations about how white people can be less racist. Instead, we should be empowering POC, putting them in positions of power, giving them the authority and opportunities to exact change. Honestly, I cannot even begin to explain how good, how powerful, how authentic this book is. You really need to read it for yourself. I gave this its rightful 5 stars. After that, I read Sparkwood by Daria Dufour. This is a queer paranormal mystery about Finn, whose twin brother Luke was just found dead, and he's been invited to the funeral, which is to take place in the realm of fairies. The thing about their hometown, Sparkwood, is that there's a parallel version of the town beneath the surface where fairies live, and everyone knows about it. So Finn reluctantly decides to attend the funeral, if only so he can investigate his brother's death and find his killer, who he's convinced is one of the fairies themselves. After reading and loving The Trouble, I could not turn away from Daria Dufour's work. I had to read more from her backlist, but I have to say I didn't love this one as much. It's a nice smorgasbord of genres. You have a paranormal element, elements of mystery, it's queer, it's romance, it's enemies to lovers, it has Daria's trademark punchy millennial humor, but I still feel like it fell short. The whole story is predicated on this murder mystery element where Finn wants to find out what happened to Luke. But it's not particularly satisfying the way everything comes to a head. That third and final act especially feels kind of clumsy and messy, and that overarching thread was lost by the story going in so many directions. But still a pretty entertaining read with an enjoyable queer romance, so I gave this 3.5 stars. Then I listened to Witchwood by Tahara Mafi, read by Bronson Pinchon. This is a middle grade fantasy story and the companion to Furthermore, which is also a wonderful book. It's about Laylee, whose mother has passed away, which has driven her father mad with grief, and he's since abandoned her in a fruitless attempt to bring her mother's soul back. So she is the only remaining mort de jour, meaning it's her job to wash bodies of the dead and prepare their souls for the afterlife. But she's being drastically overworked and quickly being overwhelmed by the sheer number of bodies to wash, and in the process her hair and her skin are turning silver as well. That is, until a pair of familiar faces appear to help Laylee rediscover color, magic, and the transformative power of friendship. Even though this story is a different flavor of fantasy compared to Furthermore, I still think it's every bit as great. Underscoring this fantastical adventure, you have these really powerful emotional themes. When it comes to Laylee, she needs to be healed physically and spiritually, and the story explores how the most valuable thing you can give another person is your time and yourself. And the story also touches on the invisibility of those who are less fortunate, especially when it comes to gender and age. As a young girl especially, Laylee has been deeply mistreated by her entire village, and I think a big part of this story is how she finally demands the respect and the resources she deserves. It's charming, the writing is witty and soulful and vivid, the characters are complex and distinctive. I just really hope the Haramafi writes more in this universe because I will happily read it. I gave this 4 stars. Then for my library, I listened to Lovecraft Country by Matt Ruff, read by Kevin Kennerly. This creepy pulp noir horror story is kind of told in a series of interconnected short stories featuring reoccurring characters who are all grappling with the legacy of racism in America, which is made literal in each of the creatures or phenomenon they face. It all begins with Atticus, whose father has just gone missing, and to get him back he's going to have to travel through what is known as Lovecraft Country, navigating cities and states that are not safe for black motorists. This will all culminate in a visit to the Braithwaite Manor, which just might be the home base for a supernatural white supremacist cult. It's a lot. I wish we didn't have to, but we kind of have to start with how this has an all-black cast and it's not own voices. The idea of racism made into literal monsters and creepy phenomenon is a great concept, but it definitely has the potential to be a bit pretentious and self-indulgent, especially depending on who's controlling the narrative. I can just imagine going to a writing workshop and having that one dude come in with this manuscript being super jazzed as he pitches it to the group as the real monster was racism all along, and me just slapping that manuscript out of his hands. It works and it doesn't work, and I think that's mostly due to format. There's really great ideas, really unsettling scenes, and moments and creatures that make you think, layered over America's blatantly racist history, so it is strangely addictive and there's a lot at stake. And I also appreciate the commentary because running through each story is this magical racist cult hunting the characters, and I thought magic was a powerful allegory for privilege because of course white people would have access to yet another means through which they can manipulate the world to suit themselves. But because of the way the story is broken up, there's no lasting consequences from episode to episode. The characters are dealing with one horrific thing, it gets wrapped up, we move on to another character, and there's little to no callback to what they just experienced. Like if you were trapped by a magical racist cult calling for your death, that wouldn't just slide off your shoulders. That's where I felt the disconnect, because real POC know that we do not easily forgive. We do not forget, especially when it comes to people, things, institutions, and powers metaphors that actively hurt us. Honestly, I read this because I heard it's being adapted for television and that show will be produced and overseen by Jordan Peele, the Oscar-winning director and writer of Get Out. It will be written by Misha Green, and so far it's set to have an amazing cast. So I feel like this story has at least found its way into the right hands. All in all, great concept, strong commentary, captivating writing with an appropriately retro touch, but it did have noticeable issues, which is why I gave it 3 stars. On a very different note, after loving the Netflix adaptation, I used my library to binge read the entire To All the Boys I've Loved Before trilogy by Jenny Han. I actually made an entire video about revisiting the genre of romance and reopening myself up to the possibility of rereading the first book and subsequently being open to experiencing the rest of the series. I'm so glad I gave this a second chance and finally read the last 2 books because they are so incredibly heartwarming and heartfelt. Jenny Han has such a way of evoking nostalgia and capturing those perfectly imperfect, those seemingly innocuous high school experiences and showing how simple, authentic moments of love and connection can truly be magic. It's not perfect and there's always a little more boy drama than I would like, but the series is really about celebrating your love, your worth, your joy, your happiness. It's about loving who you love while they are there for you to love and being unafraid to show it. It's about walking in your truth, finding your own path, taking a chance on yourself, and really what's better than that? This series strikes a great balance when it comes to romance, family, figuring out the future while honoring the past, and Laura Jean is so good about recognizing what is special about every given moment. It was a joy to read about her experiences. I gave these books respectively 4 stars, 4 stars, and 4.5 stars. Then I read/listened to Spinning Silver by Naomi Novik, read by Lisa Flanagan. This is a fantasy retelling inspired by the Rumpelstiltskin myth. It's about Miriam, the daughter of an unskilled moneylender who's letting his entire family suffer and starve because of his inability to collect. Well, one day Miriam goes out herself and makes sure everyone in her father's ledger pays back their debts, allowing their family's fortune to finally change. These dangerous, fairy-like creatures known as the Starrick begin to take notice of how Miriam can seemingly make silver turn into gold, and the Starrick king decides to unceremoniously steal away Miriam for his wife. But Miriam will do anything to regain her freedom and save her own people from the hands of the Starrick. I kind of went into this one blind, and once I realized what was actually going down, I was losing my shit. Really, the story revolves around 3 female characters: the moneylender's daughter Miriam, Wanda, a girl working for Miriam's family to pay off her father's debt, and a girl named Irina who was married off to the Tsar. So these 3 women live in a society where women are not taken seriously. They're seen as worthless. Miriam's family suffered for years because the man of the house could not do his job. Wanda was bartered away to another family to account for her father's debt. Irina was married off to a cruel Tsar just because she has a desirable bloodline and a pretty face. And basically, through extraordinary circumstances, these women find their way to each other and decide that if no one is going to help them, they are going to help themselves. They are going to band together to take out an evil Stark king, a cruel Tsar, and a violent fire demon in order to free themselves and save their entire village. I mean, talk about ladies helping ladies, ladies empowering ladies, ladies becoming badass co-conspirators, ladies who know their worth and will never sell themselves short, ladies who have been ignored and hurt and taken advantage of over and over and over again, who are finally saying enough is enough. I am fired up about this because yes. And it's brilliant because the story explores how, as women, these characters understand the urge to make themselves small, to be compliant, because that's the easier thing to do, but then it shows them going in the opposite direction where they build themselves and each other up so big that they can no longer be ignored or contained. It's great. The way the storylines overlap and develop is genius. Once again, Naomi Novik delivers, and I gave this 4.5 stars. And finally, my poetry collection for August was Corazón by Jessica Salgado. This is probably my favorite poetry collection I've read in all of 2018, which is huge because I've read from some incredible poets. In this collection, Jessica Salgado explores what it means to hunger for love, what it means to satiate that hunger, and what kind of toll it takes on us when that love is not enough. She fearlessly talks about loving her brown body as a Latinx woman, loving and living in her fatness, and learning and relearning to love yourself when people tell you that it's wrong to do so, regrowing parts of yourself where the roots have been torn out. She plainly talks about toxic relationships, how we can confuse wanting to belong to someone with a need to first and foremost belong to ourselves. It's about taking up space, being a bad bitch, being insulted in 2 languages, having good sex, having bad sex, having no sex, being brave enough to put yourself first and never apologizing for it. Honestly, she keeps it real and gets too real in this collection all at once, and I freaking loved it. 5 stars. So those are all the books I read in the month of August. In the comments, I would love to hear from you if you've read any of them yourself. But that's everything I had for this wrap up today. Thank you so much for watching this video. I really hope that you enjoyed it, and I will catch you on the flip side of the page. Bye!